Shonen Monologues, the one time modern writers get to monologue in your face and you actually eat it all up and ask for more. But the way the authors have to do this is in a very specific way, otherwise it'll flop like every other monologue before. Hence why it's called the Shonen Monologues. Or at least that's what I like to call it. I could not think of a better name for it. First, I'll tell you what monologues are and why they're boring. Second, I'll tell you about the shows that have done monologues correctly. And third, I'll recap it all, giving you like a 5-step process of how to avoid doing boring ass monologues in the future. Typically, a normal monologue would be the author just word vomiting all over the manga page where the essay covers more than the actual page and the drawing itself. A typical example I would use would be Death Note, but many viewers would not catch on to this simply because half the time it was being done correctly and the other half of the time you were just reading the manga. The problem with monologues in general is that you just word vomit, and by you I mean like the writer, and you expect the audience to like listen, understand, and know what's going on with 100% memory, memorization, and articulation, everything. The whole 9 years, every package. It's basically like an infomercial in the middle of the fucking action of the manga. You can't skip this ag, and no one cares for it. It's basically the equivalent of getting your ass chewed out by a professor in a lecture you could not give two shits about. But honestly, that last part was more of a symptom rather than the actual cause, because if you're not doing monologues in a creative way, and by you, I mean like the writer, the future potential writer of the greatest show of all time, you're just going to ruin it for everybody. Recently, I've discovered that a lot of modern shonen mangas have been doing monologues in a very interesting way, so much so you don't even realize half the time it's even a monologue. They would use these like specific tricks or hell even flip the whole script entirely to make it more interesting, using some basic examples to both in the present and in the past. But here's some of the most common tips and tricks that most artists will use to convey monologues or heavy dumps of information without you being annoyed by it. But I'm going to introduce you to this in like a case-by-case scenario so that you remember it in like a story format. Case number 1, Hikari from Jujutsu Kaisen. Okay, by the time the video gets popular, the anime episodes will already be out. But by the time of me making this, I just want to get this video out of my head and document it correctly. But for anyone that already read the manga, you already know the rules were all over the fucking place, and the author just did a technical dump, information dump, all just on like a few single pages. I don't even remember when, but it feels like it was towards the end. Normally, this would be like a downside because the narrator is monologuing the shit to us and it's all over the place, but it has more positives going for it than it has negatives. Here's some of the positive traits. Pieces of the monologue were being reiterated. This is our first time, so there's a bit of a grace of acceptance. The characters were being hyped as super strong, and we see evidence of that, and we finally get to see his domain expansion. If you've forgotten what a domain expansion is, it's basically the author describing it as the strongest thing any sorcerer can do in this universe. Guaranteed hit. The character is likable, and he's quite literally a gambling in the middle of a fight as his power-up. Kashimo, his opponent, uses the monologue information to exploit all the weaknesses and attack him and like any weak point given to him. And last but not least, the narrator bends over backwards with his booty cheek spread as far wide as you can see, making the star butthole look as big as the sun, making sure that the action still keeps on going, and making sure that the fight is going on. And I would agree with this point. This is the strongest point of why this fight is being liked. And it's not because of that one random AI clip just going around, circulating of him just dancing around. The author is going out of his way to use the monologue to describe why the action and the fight is just continuously ongoing. And you get to see a continuous entertaining back and forth. Or you can just do what Giga Chad Toto would have done. Just show your ability, reveal half of it, lie about the other half, beat the shit out of your opponent until they figure out what's really going on and what was really a part of the lie. Recycle that whole strat until you win. Not as a support, but as the Giga Chad you are. Case number 2, Bomber from Hunter x Hunter. If the author has to repeat a complicated power, then the author must keep repeating this dialogue as a condition for the power-up to be revealed, if not powered up upon. In Hunter x Hunter, specifically about Nen, A unique character exists with the sole purpose of blowing the fuck out of people.
What did he say?
However, in order to place these hypothetical bombs on people, he needs to meet a very specific set of conditions or criteria. He must touch someone and say, hey, I am a bomber, or some shit involving the word bomber. And then he must reveal how his ability must be activated to his victims prior to detonation. And they must like audibly hear it or some shit like that. A key thing to remember here is that this guy does not repeat his abilities often, and everyone is being kept intentionally in the dark. He's keeping this ability as a secret. And the author, I mean, of course, he writes this as a personality trait for this character out of convenience. But upon fighting in like a hand-to-hand combat, the author uses this character and further reveals characteristics about this power and his unique ability, which we did not know prior to. Often cases, this might be unforgivable, but the things that it has going for it is that the author is always revealing new information about this ability that further enhances the action and makes the situation more dire and dangerous. This is the author promising more action while increasing the stakes. And of course, the monologue is never repeated more than once or revealed more than once, meaning that the main idea of the monologue is never repeated continuously to the point of which it's like annoyed you. Once or twice, sure, but don't do it over 5 times. That's if there is a magic number, that's it right there. And the last point I gotta give to the author is that the intentional divergence of the I can't say the word right now, of information is introduced to mix strategy and mix it, of course, with strength. Of course, both of them being a key component of this battle. Case number 3, Death Note. Just to give you a quick recap, from L's perspective, the world's greatest detective, there's quite literally a psychopath out there just writing people's names down to no end, and he has to figure out what the hell is going on and how the hell does his power work. From Light's perspective, on the other hand, he's just a casual, normal student, a complete psychopath in my opinion, by the way, who's just doing his job, trying not to get caught with his unique 2 advantages of him having his identity hidden, of a god and having a godlike power which the world has never seen before, being used on a scale like this. The back and forth, of course, is extremely entertaining as both sides are trying to capture the other without themselves trying to get caught or self-destruct. But the major issue that comes to mind is that there are a ton of recaps, so much so it just floods pages and pages with no end. Granted, this is a detective show, so the audience is way more forgiving as this is used as a means to an end to eventually get to a conclusion, but this is oftentimes just to clue in more naive characters or just answer some stupid questions that may pop up from time to time. It happens so frequently that in the show, it falls into the most common pitfall of like a lack of action, where the most dramatic thing to happen is the death god literally doing handstands and a high school student taking a potato chip and eating it. Like, it kind of does get that boring, but the authors, however, dive more into the genre of like mystery and like detective shit, and they like introduce more deception and hidden bombs just waiting to go off, often at times as like timers, and they use the monologues by the characters, which is key by the way, to explain these situations. The one time the author withholds information and uses it and reveals it to us is when the plan is already set in action and like Light's plan just falls apart. So I think the ending episode would be best where Nier just does his like double reveal and how his like body double or like Light stand-in as like Kira basically fucks up and reveals the location of the Death Note. I love how the authors here intentionally use deception and like hidden bombs, basically a promise to the audience that this will go off, and if it doesn't go off, here's a reason why it didn't go off. And uses the monologues to explain those specifically, while an amateur would intentionally hide it in the middle of the monologue, which I appreciate was not the case. Death Note by no means is perfect, but given when it came out and what it was trying to achieve, I use this old manga and anime intentionally as a point to illustrate how far we have grown from modern times. Hunter x Hunter may be the exception because they've only done it with like one character, but now boring monologues are a thing of the past. By modern standards, boring monologues will not fly. And by not fly, I mean simply being presented as like a text bubble alone and not being integrated properly into the action of the shonen, and or making it more interesting while breaking it up and making it more chewable for the audience to read. Some examples I would like to give out a shout out to is like Baki, Keegan Ashura, and like JoJo's Bizarre Adventures. This is something I would like you guys to go and like read or like think back to and like figure it out. I'll give a better example for Baki, by the way. But their integration may be different, but the points are all the same. And in order to fix a boring monologue, here's how to do it. 1. Break your monologue up. This is like the easiest thing to do. Just switch it between characters, break it all up, yada yada yada. 2. Do not repeat monologues with the same idea. If you can't break it up and you just want to shit everything onto one page, this is the perfect time I would say this. 3. Have another character reveal it as either a deduction, trying to figure out what their power is for their advantage, or have the original character with that ability reveal that ability as an enhancing advantage. So, Bomber from Hunter x Hunter was like the perfect example of this. But like, if you really want to take it one step further, have the evil guy have like the Joker reveal a part of his plan that Batman did not figure out, just to torture him with the idea. Otherwise, to make sure intentionally that information is withheld, only for the sole purpose to like torture them. That's probably like the one exception to this, probably in like a shonen setting. But like, the monologue should introduce more action, and it should act more as a transition, not as an opening, not as an ending. The monologue here should act as a transition. That's basically the main point here. Number 4, always come to a different perspective or character or even a metaphor to help explain or enhance the understanding of what exactly is going on here. Basically reiterating point number 1, break your monologue up. In Baki Dao, for example, the author goes out of his way in explaining the Biscuit Olivia fight versus not Sukuna, how a sumo wrestler grabbed Biscuit Olivia's hips by the bone. Yes, Biscuit Olivia. And number 5, use it as a reveal. Only. A first-time explanation about a key character, motivation, or power-up. Basically, all in all, I'm just asking you as future, like you, the best writer out there writing the best work in the future, please do what Shonen does and do not present the audience with the most boring monologue you can imagine, just like a word spiel. Break it up, and I promise you, your stories will be infinitely more interesting than just having it just be dropped off at a random point in the middle of nowhere. Bonus, if you do multiple of the 5 points I mentioned above, or you try to mimic some of the traits of the specific cases I mentioned above. You don't have to do all 5 at once. Just do 2 or 3 of these at once, and I promise you, you'll have a good time.